We all know that the world is struggling economically. We see businesses closing and unemployment rates remain high. Budgets everywhere are being cut and downsizing is widespread. These cuts are not only occurring in businesses, but also in education. Teachers are being let go, classes are being cut, the ratio of students to teachers will be rising next fall in many districts, and there is discussion of schools being closed across the state. We were told that we would recover, but more and more problems emerge that delay this recovery indefinitely. But where exactly are these cuts coming from? What is going on behind the scenes? We asked Ross Ramsey, a writer and editor for the Texas Tribune, to give us a summary of what, in his opinion, was going on in Texas.
Well, they started being aware in state government that they were low on money, 18 months or so ago. They have 2 or 3 reasons that the state budget is in the situation it's in. One of them is, of course, the recession, which cost them somewhere in the vicinity of $3 or $4 billion in sales tax revenue that they otherwise counted on. Another one is something they call the structural deficit. In 2006, the Texas legislature decided to revise its state business tax and to tell all the local school districts, we're going to lower your local property taxes and we'll make up the difference. And as it turns out, the property tax or the business tax that they created was smaller than the obligation that they created by lowering the property taxes. So the number guys come in from the controller's office every year and say, you start every new budget about $10 billion underwater because of the difference between this new business tax and the promises you made on school taxes. And then the rest of it was that 2 years ago, we would have had similar financial problems to those that we have now, but kind of the Easter Bunny showed up. The federal government came in with stimulus money and gave the state a bunch of money that they used for that budget. That one-time money is no longer there, but the expenses that it was covering remain. So those 3 things together left the state in a hole, and it became apparent to them that it was going to be a very deep hole probably 18 to 20 months ago.
The decision to make cuts is difficult and is a popular subject of debate among parents, teachers, administrators, and school boards throughout Texas. This question is one of balancing economic reality with the desire to maintain a higher quality public education. In recent years, about a third of the average Texas school district's budget was determined by the state, which is bad news in a year when the state has a lot less money.
They start with a current budget of about $187 billion. The first crack at this was a budget of about $154 billion. It's a pretty big cut. Yeah. They've worked their way up in the House at least up to in the vicinity of $164, $165 billion. The Senate's coming in a little higher than that. So I think we're going to get some cuts here. One last thing, even if you keep the budget flat, our last budget was $187 billion. Let's say our next budget was $187 billion. Even if it's flat, you get behind. We add 80,000 kids to our public school system every year, net. That includes the ones who leave and the ones who come in. So we net 160,000, 170,000 kids every 2 years. The cost of providing services, both in education and social services and all of those things, grows all the time, inflation. And the population grows in social service spending. So even if you stay on an even keel, we're going to spend exactly the same number of dollars, you get a little bit behind, and that would amount to a cut in service.
We're actually needing to reduce about 12 teacher units, and every area was hit. For example, we got smaller in math, we got smaller in English, we're getting smaller in science, we're getting smaller, so you can go across.
Dr. Lucio Calzada is the principal of Stephen F. Austin High School in Austin, Texas. An urban school located in the center of the city, Austin High is part of a large district that faces challenges of its own. One of those is that the state requires tax money collected here to be sent to aid other districts with lower property value.
So in terms of state school financing, we're getting taxed, those of us that own property in Austin, and some of our money is going to another district to support other people's kids.
Despite these significant obstacles, Calzada still strives to run a high-quality public school.
I expect us to continue to help students to achieve at their greatest potential, period. And I have no choice but to continue towards that mission.
Nevertheless, Texas is not the only state facing cuts. New York Times columnist Gail Collins agrees that we are witnessing the same sort of cuts to education throughout the nation.
The fact that you've got this huge budget deficit is not unusual. I mean, everybody's, California is just falling off a cliff. We just had a big one that we just resolved in New York. The fact that you have such a big budget deficit, until about 3 minutes ago, we in the outside world were being assured that Texas was the one state that, because of its low taxes and great work environment, was not going to have a problem. That's a big surprise.
There is unrest among parents, teachers, students, and school communities. As each district struggles to figure out how to solve this problem, the state legislature is looking for solutions as well. A big debate in Texas is whether or not to dip into what is commonly known as the Rainy Day Fund.
The Rainy Day Fund is set up in the late 80s. We had a couple of economic crises in state government. Oil prices went crazy, state government revenues went crazy, and they looked at it and they said, instead of having government income go like this, we ought to have something that levels it out. So the technical name for this is the Economic Stabilization Fund, and it's designed to take kind of the ups and downs out of the state economy, or out of the state's revenue. So they created this, and they created they said, we're going to designate a couple of taxes, mostly oil and gas taxes. We're going to designate these, and when any overage that comes in from those taxes is going to flow into this savings account that we'll call informally the Rainy Day Fund. Well, the Rainy Day Fund has gotten gigantic because oil and gas prices have been really high. So ordinarily, we'd come into a situation like this, like as we did in 2003, and we'd say, how much is over there? And they'd say, well, $1 billion, $2 billion, something like that. This time we come in and there's $9.4 billion. It's a lot of money. And they came in and they said, well, should we use all of this money against our shortfall or not?
The Rainy Day Fund debate sounds unusual to say the least. Many Texans and non-Texans alike wonder why such a large amount of controversy surrounds this issue.
The Rainy Day Fund thing is unique. I don't know of another state in which, if you had this big pile of money and you were looking at cuts of the magnitude you're looking at in the public school system, that there would be even a debate about whether to take the big pot of money that's right there, sitting there, and use it. So that's unique too. So it's a little bit unique, even though it's the same.
Each state's solution is slightly different despite having similar underlying objectives. As the nation fights for recovery from this economic slump, it seems that finding a compromise is a difficult task and is evidently far more complex when it comes to our children's education. For now, citizens can only hope that officials can quickly devise a viable solution that preserves the quality of the public school system. For PBS Student Reporting Labs at Austin High School, this is Hannah Young, Eli Smith, and Sam King.